Hello everyone, this is Hanrik from Team FD, today bringing you the Bloom Lord, more accurately, Vegetation Fairy deck profile that we used in the Hong Kong area 3-3 to get first place. Worth mentioning is that in a 3-3 environment, it's somewhat different from your regular one-on-one best of 3 or best of 1 environment, because no matter how popular a deck is, even if every single team were to run that deck, there's only a 33.33% chance you're ever going to face it. Which means that counter decks or counter cards that only works on specific matchups are much worse in this 3-3 environment, because even if you get the counter, there's only 33% chance you're going to face them. Might as well concentrate on doing your own stuff than thinking about how to counter the enemy. So, Kokomon, the strongest egg we have. The draw 1 consistency is what makes the Bloom Lord deck shine, giving you so much draws that you're never worried about not finding the cards you need. Then we have 4 BT10 Palmon. This card used to be only searching 1 because there were way more plants and vegetations than fairies, but now there's a lot more fairies, so it's more regular to actually get 1 each, the best searcher in the deck. Then we have BT14 Palmon. BT14 Palmon is a very, very strong card because it can hinder your opponents greatly by just sitting there in your breeding zone as a threat. If it's in your breeding zone, your opponent will have to think twice if they're going to ever leave something unsuspended when they end their turn. Conversely, it's also a very tricky card to use, because this threat only works if it's in the breeding zone. If it's on the board, it's going to get killed off. But if it's in the breeding zone, you're essentially holding your own breeding zone as hostage as well as the enemy, because once you evolve over it, this threat is gone. So it requires a lot of skill to balance when you would hold this in the breeding or just evolve over it. Then we have BT15 Palmon X, the replacement for the the EX3 Pomumon. Back then, when we wanted to suspend anything, we had to use Pomumon to suspend the other guy, but then we come to complications where I have to evolve over it, or I don't want to suspend them at a specific timing, etc., etc. Palmon X solves this problem because it just suspends when you play or evolve it. And that is a very, very strong inherited effect of when you play a green tamer +1 memory, which has actually caused a change in direction of this deck, where we include a lot of tamers. Then we have 2 BT9 Pomumon. Yes, Walla just said that we shouldn't be teching in specific cards just to counter specific matchups because it's going to be 33% max. Well, Anubismon is one of those decks which we were pretty confident that every single team were going to have. So there was at least 33.3% that I was going to face it. And without Pomumon, it's actually quite a difficult matchup against Anubis, because there's no way for you to stop him. You can only pray he doesn't have Anubis. But with Pomumon, they have to spend a whole turn or two to get rid of it before they can go into Anubis. And the opportunity cost to run this counter is just so low, because it's just a green plant. We could evolve over it, we can search it. The opportunity cost is just very low. Then we have 1 Lalamon. This slot is a sort of a flex slot, which you can run whatever you want. But because we're not trying to not run counters, so I run Lalamon, the 5th searcher of the deck, because this deck under the new plan runs and exhausts a lot of the level 3s and 4s. So Lalamon helps us recoup our resources, and it still has the -1 evolve effect, which is very beneficial. 3 Togemon. Togemon to pair with the BT15 Palmon X. Palmon X gives you 1 memory when you summon a Tamer. Togemon -3 cost for the Tamer, and it can self-suspend, and it still has the -1 evolve cost Digivolution effect. There's nothing to complain about this card apart from the fact that you can't suspend them without a target in your hand. Unlike the BT13 Sunflowmon, where you can just suspend to blank the Evo and suspend for the sake of suspending so you can get all your one suspend effects. You can't do this with Togemon. So occasionally you'll run into some weird awkward situations where you have a Togemon set up, you need to suspend, but you don't have a Tamer. Which is why we still run BT13 Sunflowmon. Sunflowmon can, as I said, self-suspend for no cost. And this deck right now runs a lot more fairies, and in fact all level 6s are fairies, so you could essentially say this card is -2 Evo on level 6, which is pretty damn strong. Then we have the strongest level 4 of the deck, BT10 Sunflowmon. Sets up your board, gives you consistency draws, does everything. Nothing to complain about with this card. Funnily enough, we're running 3 Lilymon Ace. But you're gonna ask, hey, isn't Lilymon Ace a 3-mem evolve? Isn't that really bad? What's the likelihood of a level 4 surviving and you could use the Blast Evolution? You're right, in the sense that, yes, you're not gonna evolve it because it's 3 costs. Yes, it's very hard to Blast Evolution because level 4s just die off so easily. But the most important point with this card is its 4 cost. Because it's 4 cost, if you have 4 mem or 3 mem plus a Mimi, BT13 Mimi to get 1 mem, this card can evolve into level 6 immediately in the same turn. 4 cost summon, evolve into level 6 quantum, remove the board. Which makes it extremely hard for opponents to stop you from making removal plays, because this option of just 4 cost hard summon is always open. Additionally, because Apocalymon is such a prevalent deck, which again we expected to every team to at least run 1, so 33.33% is base 1. Lilymon Ace does wonders against that deck, because their whole deck centers around using level 3s and sometimes level 4s to act as fodder to crash and die to trigger their on-delete effects to draw and mill. With Lilymon Ace, whenever they try to attack, just Evo over, Blast Evo with level 4, send to the bottom of the deck, and you nullify the on-deletion. Then we have 1 Agitarmon. Yes, only 1 Agitar. Those of you familiar with this deck would probably be very surprised, because Agitar was typically ran at 4, and it's the most important level 5 of the deck, being the level 5 version of the Sunflowmon. However, under the new game plan with this deck, Agitarmon is actually very bad. And the short answer is because it's 3 cost. 3 cost is too expensive. And later, I'll go in depth on what the new game plan is and why Agitarmon is not good, and you'll understand why 3 cost is a big no-no in this deck. Then we have our Digiabsorption level 5s, Blossom, Argo, and Ent. Blossom's Limb 1, Argo's Limb 1, and Ent is the 3rd best Digiabsorption level 5. Blossom is the right type, 0 cost evolution, not much needs to be said. Argo, while being the wrong type, it does have a beneficial inherited effect, albeit very hard to trigger, because we're going to spend our level 3s all the time, and it's not uncommon to have no level 3s left by the time you're going to attack with the level 6 with Argo underneath. However, 0 cost is too valuable. Then we have the 3rd best, Antoine. He has unsuspends himself if you have 2 or more suspended bodies, which essentially gives us an additional unsuspended body to suspend again, which is why he's the 3rd best option. Then we have 1 Chimeramon. Chimera, again, is related to the new game plan of this deck, and essentially it's the 4th Digiabsorption and somewhat hybrid. Then we have the Lord and Savior of the deck, Quantumon. Quantumon literally solves all the issues that this deck has. It's an unconditional, no setup required, no questions asked, close to 100% effective removal. Evolve it, the opposing Digimon is gone. And you're going to check the opponent's security and get rid of all their security threats to make sure your attacks goes through without any hiccups. And it can control what your opponent draws by controlling what card you give them. Blue mode used to have the problem of very difficult time having something stay on the board and stick because things just get removed, especially when they're level 3/4s and even level 5/6s have no protection whatsoever. Quantumon has protection by itself if you declare the correct card type. Typically, you're going to declare Digimon because Digimon are the most common card types. Specifically, if you're against Secon decks, you might want to call options, which makes Quantumon a very safe card as long as it's not suspended. Typically, it won't die. Which is why it's outshined the old removal option we have, which is Hydra. Then we have 3 Bloom Lords. Yes, only 3 Bloom Lords, which is why it's not really a Bloom Lord deck. However, we're only running 3 Bloom Lords is because Bloom Lord is somewhat a terrible card in the sense that it's all aggro, no defense, no alternative ways to use this card apart from going aggro. And if you go aggro and you're not finishing your opponent off, you're just opening yourself up to removal by having a suspended board with tiny DP, no protection effects, no anything. Which is why you only typically ever use Bloom Lord when you're going for the OTK, which is why you don't need 4. You're never going to evolve 4 Bloom Lords in the same turn. Despite how much I've just praised Quantumon and saying how Quantumon is like the superior version of Hydramon, which saves the deck and replaced Hydra, we still run 1 Hydra. Specifically because in the BT15 meta, level 6 removal is somewhat difficult. Think about it. The most popular decks are Garurumon, and Apocalymon, and Anubismon. Apocalymon either summons the Apocalypse, or they're paying 11 cost to remove it. And for Anubis, unless they have Minerva for the devolution and then Anubis pop the level 5, or they have Retaliation, they're not killing any level 6s. As for Metagaru, enough said, they have no removal at all, which makes level 6s actually somewhat safe, which means Hydramon has this tiny niche where it could recur the removal effect and help you gain memory, which makes it somewhat usable. Then we have 3 Quartzmons. Basically the Bloom Lord exclusive level 7. Yes, there is no Ruin Mode because Ruin Mode only evolves on Quantum and doesn't help us with the game plan of killing the opponent. It only stalls for a turn, but not that effective because not all decks care about the 5k DP. Which is why we're just concentrating on doing our own stuff, which is why we have Quartz instead. Quartz helps us make use of our level 6s, which has already used their effects, and helps keep your board alive if you had to use Bloom Lord for just aggro play and not an OTK play. Suspends all the Tamers, a very strong card overall. Then we have BT14 Mimi, basically a delay on legs. Has a search, has the memory gain, recurable, and it helps triggers all our -1 evolution, Digivolution effects. And it's a tamer for Toge. Nothing more we could ask for. Then 2 BT1 Mimis, arguably the strongest tamer in green, or in fact in the whole game, because it helps you keep your breeding zone up, which means that you're always available for a revenge kill, which is a very strong thing to have. Then we're running 3 options. Yes, 3 options, 0 delays. Hidden Potential Unleashed, very self-explanatory, best card in the deck. Then we have 2 cards that were released way back in BT1 and promo packs, and no one has ever made use of, but now makes a resurgence, and in fact, very damn strong. A New World. A New World lets you bounce a Mimi, and then play a Palmon for free. Well, typically, it would be a terrible deal because you're paying a Tamer for 3 or 4, and you're just bouncing it to play a Palmon, which is also a 3 cost. So you're just net evening. But remember, we have Togemon and we have Palmon X, which makes our Tamers free. And we can recycle our Tamers for Togemon to use again, especially BT14 Mimi, which is a searcher, so we can get extra searches. And for those who've played this deck before, would remember back in the days of BT10 or so, some people will opt to run the 2-cost Mushroomon because sometimes you just needed the 2-cost body for you to spend. And this is effectively a 0-cost body because you're playing the Tamer for 0, you're summoning the PAL for 0, you get the search from the PAL, and now you have a free body to suspend. Which is why a New World is a very broken card in this deck. So, on to the big change of this deck, the new game plan, the new direction of the deck. So, typical old Bloom Lord was Turtle Agitar in your breeding, or maybe level 3 with enough delays and Tamer so you can evolve into Agitar Sunflow on the same turn, either way. Turtle in breeding, play random stuff on the board, force the opponent to answer your board, then revenge kill the Agitar. That was a typical game plan. Well, what changed? Starting from EX5, when the Metal Garuru X line and Garuru X line, the blue-purple one, came out, OTKing became somewhat easy and consistent. Because OTKing is easy and consistent, we don't have a chance to do revenge kills. We can't counter-attack. If we just throw a board of random stuff up, we just die. There's no chance of using Agitar. So, which is why we scrap the whole Agitar plan, and we just go for the aggro plan. What's the aggro plan? Typically, you're just going to evolve level 3, 3-cost summon level 3 on turn 1, and by turn 2, regardless of whatever happens, you're just going to start evolving into level 4s, preferably Sunflowmon, because Sunflowmon helps you extend your board, and start building your board on the board. And you pushing out your breeding zone every single turn. What advantage does this give us? Well, first of all, you get more breeding zone rotation, so more draws from the eggs, and more bodies on the board. And this is exactly why we're running 3 Ace Lilymons. If you push out your board early enough, i.e. by turn 2, yes, your opponent could possibly deal with a level 3 or level 4. Yes, your level 3 and level 4 would possibly die, but if you're extending your board of Sunflowmons, you're going to typically have at least 3 bodies, maybe sometimes 4 bodies. Not all 4 bodies are going to die. Some of them will survive. And this is where the Ace Lily comes in. Ace Lily helps your board survive, and it punishes your opponent for trying to kill your board. And if the board survived, it means that your opponent either just did nothing, let you build a board for free, which then you can set up your OTK with Bloom Lord. If they move their breeding zone out to help remove the board, they're typically not going to kill the whole board, so you're going to be left with something to do your revenge kill. And to do a revenge kill, we need Hydra and Quartz. I mean Quantum. Which is why these guys are so important. If we're going to do a revenge kill, we need to make sure we can do the revenge kill. Which is why we want the 0-cost evolutions, or maybe 1-cost evolutions, and not the 3-cost Agitar, because 3-cost Agitar is too damn expensive. You're not likely going to have 3 costs to do your revenge kill. Which is why preferably we're just going to absorb into Quantum and kill whatever killed us. This playstyle greatly accelerates the whole deck because you're no longer waiting for a counter attack and just going all ham and kill the opponent. But this does give the deck one big glaring weakness, and that is AoE removal. Because we build the board on the board and not turtle, and we have no delays, every single play we make is a commitment to the board, which means we can't avoid committing to the board, and which means our board will have stuff to be removed. Typically, the best AoE removal there are is the 6-cost red option that pops us 6000 DP and -1 cost for each Digimon your opponent has. Well, thankfully, red is out of the meta, so that is not a concern. Then we have Dexmon. Dexmon indeed just murders this deck. However, Bloomlord is the only deck in the whole meta which builds a board, excluding Anubis. But Anubismon runs Psychemon, which inherently just counters Dexmon. Which is why not many people run Dexmon. Even if they do, it's probably only Anubis, and Anubis at 1 or 2 copies. So we'll just close our eyes and pretend they don't have it. And the final remaining AoE removable threat is Ruin Mode. Well, Ruin Mode just absolutely murders this deck because it even shuts down our breeding zone. Ruin Mode is level 7, and you need to evolve to a level 6 before you can evolve to a level 7. Which means it's absolutely impossible that they have Ruin Mode by turn 2. Which means, as long as you kill them before they can gather their level 6 and evolve to level 7, you won't ever see Ruin Mode. Because we build our board on the board and always commit and never have cards like Delays, which slows us for a turn, we have a very wide board, which means Chimera is actually more easy to use because we have Strangled level 4s that we just used for fodder. Evolve, Chimera, and now we have a new body. In fact, Chimera can pick up all our minus evolution cost level 3s and 4s, and so when we evolve into a level 6, it's -3 cost. And it's a hybrid, pseudo-hybrid, per se.